Today I'm going to be working on this PlayStation 5. This has been sent in by a friend of mine who has sent it to me before about 6 months ago. I originally started a video on this yesterday because, well, the condition of it wasn't great. So when I first worked on this, I replaced the HDMI port and I didn't really get any reports that anything was wrong. And then a couple of days ago, a friend of mine got in touch and said that they're having issues with the PS5. So I said, pop it down and I'll have a look. I replaced the HDMI port again because it had been damaged and basically thought that was the end of it. So I wasn't going to do a video. I've basically scrapped that video. And then I've gone to plug it in and test it, and it's working occasionally, but it's flickering on and off. The screen is flickering on and off. So I got back in touch with this friend of mine and asked her what the deal was with it, and she said, oh yeah, it's been doing that since you last worked on it. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to have to look into it then, because obviously that's not something that was reported at the time and stuff like that. The HDMI port has been damaged again, and yeah, there's a lot of unknowns here. The overall condition of this yesterday when I replaced the HDMI port was pretty rough, and I'm not going to lie, it was in probably one of the poorest conditions I've seen a PS5 in. That's only been serviced, 6 months ago. It was caked in dust, it's got signs of liquid damage everywhere, and yeah, it was just really, really, really rough. The HDMI port that I did, the anchor points hadn't actually broken, so there was no fracture on the solder, there was nothing wrong with the soldering job, but the port itself had been pushed back, and basically that knocked all of the pins off the board and caused it to not display. So yeah, I thought to do a video on this just to get some opinions more than anything. Do you think that, number one, I should be doing this under warranty because it was supposedly like this all the time and it was temperamental and stuff like that? Or do you think it should be treated as a new job? So what I have said to this friend of mine is, just on this occasion, just as kind of more of a goodwill gesture, I'll sort of do it under warranty, but at the same time, I'm going to have to charge for any parts that I use, because from what I can gather, if the screen is flickering on and off and it's temperamental, it's probably going to be down to the HDMI encoder. The problem with that is those encoders are not cheap, and unfortunately I'm going to have to charge for it, because if this issue was reported to start with, 6 months ago, I would have charged for the parts as well as the labour, but instead I've just charged for the labour because I replaced the HDMI port and everything seemed fine when it went back out the door. I didn't get any flickering on the screen, and granted, obviously I don't give them a full stress test and stuff when I just do a HDMI port. I only do that when I get no power issues and like glitching displays and stuff like that, the more serious issues. But what do you guys think? Should I be covering this under warranty? Let me know in the comments down below. But with that being said, my name's Hakko, I'm an electronics technician. I mainly work on games consoles, but I do work on other stuff as well. So if that's the sort of stuff you enjoy, then be sure to get subscribed and turn on the bell notifications, and that way you won't miss any future videos. If you need to organise a repair, you can do that on my website, thecoder.repair. Get in touch and I'll be happy to take on the repair for you. And if you need any parts and supplies for PlayStation 5s or any other consoles, then be sure to check out the online store, consolefix.shop. I strip down consoles, I take off individual components, chips, fuses, capacitors, resistors, whatever it is. I'll take them off the board, I'll test them, and I'll sell them on my online store because I'm a money-grabbing YouTuber. But with that being said, let's get into today's video. I stumbled my words a little bit then. Anyway, let's see what's wrong with this thing. As I said, this has got a few intermittent issues. So when I first powered it back on, after I replaced the HDMI port, it did display on the screen, but it took a long while to actually load up, and then I noticed that it was flickering. So I was thinking to myself, well, what on earth is going on here? In fact, I'm going to just clean my HDMI cable while I'm talking. But basically, I thought to myself, what on earth is going on here? This isn't normal sort of thing. So obviously, I spoke to this friend of mine and asked her what's going on, and she said, oh yeah, it's been happening since you last repaired it. And yeah, that just seems a little bit strange to me, because why wouldn't it be reported there and then, right? But that being said, I mean, sometimes people forget, and if it was an intermittent thing, she might have just put up with it. I'm not going to call her a liar or anything like that. It's one of those things really where I can't prove much, but yeah, so the console does turn on and it does appear to work. But if I go back to here and switch over to the HDMI on my monitor, let's just have a look, see what's going on. And yeah, so if that was a no display, the screen would have already flicked back to my PC, right? But it's not, it's hanging. It's just hanging on a black screen. And obviously that means that it's picking up a signal, but unfortunately it's just not able to display. And in a moment, it'll probably come on. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to leave it for a minute, see if it comes on. And obviously, no matter what, we've still got to take it back apart and just see what's actually going on with it, because this isn't normal. And yeah, I just need to try and figure this out. And yeah, okay, so I was just replying to a customer then, and I did see it flicker on, and that was just for a second. So yeah, it's got these, obviously, you know, flickering issues and stuff. But what this person said to me is that it was working absolutely fine upstairs in the kids' room, but then when she took it downstairs to try it on that TV, she used to be able to get a signal, and now she can't, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's just really, really weird. But I've got a feeling it's probably a bad HDMI encoder. But when you see the condition that the inside of this is in, even after I've cleaned it out and stuff, you'll understand my concerns here. So let's go back to overhead. I'll strip this down and I'll show you what I'm actually dealing with. So if we look at the case here, everything seems fine, right? Wrong. So first of all, we have some smear marks around here. That's signs that liquid has fallen into this. But if we spin this around, that's what it looks like. So the plan for this was to put it back together and then take it back into the house, take the case back off it and wash this case, you know, in the sink with some soapy water. Obviously, that might cause issues with the stickers and stuff, but I couldn't really leave it like that, right? So we've got that on that side. And then if we just shut this down, so it is responding, you know, it's actually booted up into the dashboard. But yeah, another issue we've got is we've got a scratch just here, which means this has been dropped. But I think that might have been the case from the last time I worked on this. If I just unplug this, I don't want to risk breaking this HDMI port again, because I know that was a mighty fine job when it comes to the HDMI port. But if we just pop this side off, yeah, and then yeah, definitely 100% liquid damaged, right? And it was caked in dust as well. And obviously that's another issue. Obviously, you know, that's not a major issue because, well, just clean out the dust and stuff, which I actually did. So I've fully serviced this, ready to go back to the customer. But unfortunately, it's still not working. So I'm going to get this thing apart, and what I plan to do with this is I'm just going to connect up to UART on it just to see if I get any error codes. So we might get a UART error code on it, you know, just giving us some information on what's actually going on with it and stuff like that. So I'm going to do that. I'll connect up to UART, I'll see if we've got an error code there. If not, then chances are I'm just going to be replacing the HDMI encoder, but I'll check, you know, the circuit around it. I'll check the diodes and the capacitors and the EMI filters and stuff like that, just to see what the actual cause of this is. I don't just want to go and willy-nilly replace the HDMI encoder, because that's going to be a waste of time and money. If I can do this, you know, for just a couple of EMI filters, for example, then I don't have to charge for an encoder. But personally, I think that's fair, because, you know, charging for the parts I think is fair, because at least on it, you know, at least I get to sell some parts, which is always a bonus. You know, I obviously make a profit on the parts because I'd sell them at retail. I wouldn't sell them at cost. I would mark it up in this case, because I would be able to sell that at retail at a later time, right? So I'd sell it at whatever I could resell it at. And yeah, but I think it's fair, because if this had an encoder at the time, you know, 6 months ago, regardless of what's happened here, if this had a encoder 6 months ago, I would have said, right, you need to pay for the encoder. So I can't just go and put free parts on it. You know, I'd be losing money. If I did that with every customer, I'd be out of business in 2 weeks. So I can't do that. I need to make money on the parts, or I at least need to break even on the parts. Time I can always get back, money you can't. Well, I say time you can always get back. Time is the most valuable asset that you'll ever own, because it's finite and it will expire. But enough getting philosophical, you know, enough of that crap. I'm going to get this apart. It's going to take me a few minutes, so I'll fast forward through and I'll pick it up when I'm inside. Okie dokie, so I'm just about inside the console here. And one thing that I did note on this as well is that, number one, the board is singed, so we've got some browning on it. And number two, I have made a boo-boo here and trapped that cable. But it didn't cause any issues. Obviously, if it did, I would have picked up on it. But, yep, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I don't make mistakes myself, because I do. I've trapped this cable, which means I will replace this cable for the customer because it is damaged now. The problem with these is that the flex cable for the LED ribbon, it's supposed to sit in 2 little grooves where this screw goes here. So it's supposed to sit like that, and then it's supposed to wrap in some little cutouts here. And it's supposed to hold there, right? But the problem is, as soon as you release tension on this, it pops up. And half the time it falls out, and it ends up getting trapped on the screw and damaging that. And it can cause a triple beep, 3 beep and then off when the console boots up. But this isn't going to be the cause of the issue, or at least I don't think it would be. It's very, very unlikely. But it looks like I have made a boo-boo there. I will be the first one to hold my hands up to it. But I'll replace that cable, that's not a problem. But yeah, as you can see, we definitely have some singeing going on around by the APU. But you can see here that I have given this a full clean and, you know, given it a full service and stuff like that, as I do with every single console. The only thing I didn't do was clean the case itself, because I wanted to clean that using, you know, soapy water. And obviously I can't do that until it's back in the house, because I don't have a sink in my workshop. So yeah, there is that. But that being said, we've got some singeing on the board. It's just in overall poor condition. There's singeing on this side of the board as well, so we've definitely had some heat and stuff. But what I have been told about this since I discovered this issue, or, you know, since this issue first showed up for me, is that this console runs basically 24/7. Because the kid, my customer's kid, apparently does it to collect some coins or something. And I've said, look, you can't do that. You can't run these 24 hours a day. They're not designed for it. And it will cause issues. And it'll cause issues like this. So, yeah, but you can see even just like that now. Like, this board is just not great at all. It's very, very singed from heat and stuff like that. And the problem with having it turned on 24/7 as well is that it's just constantly sucking in dust. And the customer said to me, will a cooling stand help? And no, because that's more airflow, that's more air being pulled towards it, which means there's more dust being pulled towards it. The only thing that's really going to help with this, to keep it in good condition, is a HEPA filter and turning it off when it's not in use. Don't let your kid run it 24 hours a day, regardless of whether they're playing it or not. Don't let them run it 24 hours a day, because that's just not good for the board at all. But anyway, let's have a look under here. I'll show you my work, what I've done to it. I'll show you the quality of work, because I know 100% that this is going to be, you know, decent quality and stuff like that. And then we'll get into actually trying to figure out the issue. So if we take a look here around the HDMI port, you'll see that all of these solder joints are absolutely solid. Yes, fair enough, there's a couple of solder joints here which are not, they're not even, right? But at the end of the day, they are all connected, and I shouldn't have any bridges on this port at all. So I very much doubt that my work is going to be the cause of this issue, right? So I'm just checking all of these pins, but I'll pretty much guarantee that every single one of these are soldered. And I'm also pretty much going to guarantee that we don't have any bridges. I mean, I could be wrong. I could have missed something, right? But apparently this issue was here before, and that's one of the reasons that it come back to me. But I mean, even still, I only offer 3-month warranty, and if it's only just being reported to me, then there's not that much I can do, really. But I have said that the port itself I'll cover under warranty, and then I'll just charge it for parts on this occasion. But yeah, I've got my multimeter in continuity mode here. So continuity mode is going to make a beep when we complete a circuit. So if we've got a completed path, for example, from this pin here to this pin here because of a bridge, then it's going to show up and it's going to cause the multimeter to beep. So basically, I'm just going to check all of these pins, make sure I don't have any bridges, just by going from one pin to the other. Oh. Okay, I do have a bridge here. Oh, okay. So I guess my guarantee is wrong. Unless that's a blown filter or an issue with the HDMI encoder. Right, so it was these two here. So if we look at these traces, so these two traces here are showing up as short, right? And if we look at these two traces, these are data lines. Basically what these are, well, these are all separate data lines. So we've got a positive and a negative for each data line. And that's what this and this is. So one's positive, one's negative. So because we've got a bridge between this one and this one, that's two separate data lines which are being bridged together. Or I say we've got a bridge, we've got a short between them, right? Which means that the data is going to be, well, it's going to be getting corrupted. So let's just have a look. And oh wow, it's amazing what you miss, isn't it, when you're in a rush? I do have a bridge between those data lines. Oh, that sucks. I pretty much guaranteed that that wasn't going to be the cause as well. Well, that's embarrassing to say the least. Let's just fix this bridge. So I'm just going to flow these and pull that bridge out. So all I'm doing is just collecting up solder on the iron. So the solder is going to want to follow the heat. Solder loves heat. So the solder is going to follow the iron, and it's going to stick to the iron tip. Okay, that's that. Slightly embarrassed, not going to lie. Well, actually, no, I'm not, because we all make mistakes, right? We all overlook things from time to time, and this is why we do tests after the job's been completed. So my rule is I test absolutely everything once the console's been put back together, once the device has been put back together. So basically, I'll test it while it's outside the housing, and then I'll test it. Okay, we still have a bridge there. These two. Okay, so yeah, I'll test it once it's outside the housing, and I'll also test it again once it's been put back together, and that just ensures that I don't miss anything, right? I might just do this entire port again. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to. Alright, so I've got the board over the edge of my table here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my hot air station out. So if we just take a look here, my board is hanging over the edge of my desk, and I'm just going to heat up this board from underneath just to prevent any damage to any components on the top. So I'll pull the hot air station out a bit, and then that way I can get to the underside of the board. If I can find the button to turn it on, there we go. And I can just heat up from this side of the board, and that'll basically prevent it from damaging the other components on this side of the board. Whoops, slipped a little bit. If we go back to this side here, and bring that so as it's in position, there we are. And then I'm just going to desolder this port. Just going to add some flux. So I'm not going to be reusing this port, I'll put a new one on. I've got my hot air set at 448 degrees Celsius. and give that a wiggle till it's loose. And then just remove it. There we are. Good. So there was a bridge on those pins. Obviously that is my fault. So what I'll do now is just replace the solder that's on here. Add some fresh leaded solder. I don't need it to penetrate all the way through. That'll get done with the hot air. So I'm just going to add a blob there. And then just tin these pins as well. There we are. Beautiful. And then I'm going to just do the same thing again, but in reverse. So I'm going to heat up from underneath. And what I'm looking for here is for these anchor points, the solder on the anchor points to just drop down. And what that will tell me is that the solder's flowed all the way through and that it will be ready for a new port to drop on. Okay, so there they are, starting to fall through. Give it a couple more seconds here. Yep, those two there have gone. So surface tension will put it through. Now I'm just going to keep the airflow moving. Press down on the port. And then just leave that to solidify. The light's going to be reflecting there. Unfortunately, there's not really a lot I can do. Light reflects off metal. Yes, I can get an angled ring light, but yeah. There we go. So that's that. I'm going to let that solidify and cool down. But that looks like it's lined up. It's actually not quite lined up. So it needs to be pushed in this way slightly. There we are. So that's been pushed all the way in. Make sure that it's all nice and level. Okay. I'm going to clean up. Just put some isopropyl alcohol on the toothbrush. Give it a scrub. That's cleaned up enough for now. It will get cleaned up some more. But I'm just going to give all of these pins a nudge. And they're all absolutely fine. No problems at all. Okay, so let's just clean up fully. I'll clean inside the port as well. So to clean inside the port, just IPA on the toothbrush and call it good. Alright, we're good to go there. That's nice and clean. Yep, plenty of solder on those anchor points now. I'm happy that that's not going to go anywhere. So now let's give this another test and we'll just see and make sure that there's no bridges. And okay, good. We now have no bridges. Awesome. So I'm happy with how that's gone. I'm not happy that I missed it before. This job could have gone off the bench yesterday. But never mind. So what's been happening here is the data lines are basically bridged together because of a solder bridge, which was my fault. I'm not going to deny that. But basically what's happened here is the data lines are bridged, causing the data to be sent down the the same data to be sent down multiple lines, and yeah, that's caused corruption and stuff like that. So obviously that's what's causing the flickering, or at least I hope that's what's caused the flickering. Alright, so there's the heatsink back on, and like I said, that LED ribbon isn't going to cause any issues, but I will replace it anyway. Let's just switch this over. So back to HDMI 2. Straight on. Straight on. Awesome. So I'm not experiencing the flickering anymore. I'm not seeing this flickering that was reported. And I think what's happened here, so there's a couple of things happened here. Number one is the original port was damaged. The pins had been snapped away, right? And it had just generally been mistreated. So what I think has happened here is, number one, obviously I've made a mistake in, you know, having a bridge pin that I didn't see. We all do it at the end of the day, you know, it's not something to be, you know, ashamed of. You know, I can admit that I make mistakes. We all do. My work is not the best. I'm not the best technician in the world and all of that stuff. And even the best technicians in the world make mistakes, right? The other issue here is that the customer has said that it was doing that before. It was flickering on and off. And I think what she means by that is when she's plugging it in and out. And obviously that's not good because, you know, I think it's just a coincidence that my definition of the flickering on and off and her definition of the flickering on and off are similar, but they're not quite the same. It's just a coincidence, I think. Because I think what's happened is the kid has plugged it back in, rammed it in there, and it's caused a pin or two to break, and then over time it's just broken again and again and again. You know, one or more of the pins have broken every time I've unplugged it. And this is a problem with letting your kid move the console around, you know. I'm not trying to get out of any kind of warranty work here, but at the end of the day, the port was broken and it was damaged again, which means no warranty, right? But even still, it's been 6 months or so. And that means no warranty anyway, because I've already fixed it. And if it's been working for 6 months, then that means it was fixed. You know, it's one of those things. So anyway, this is fixed now. I'm glad it's working. I can get it off my bench and yeah, I can just, well, probably not wash my hands with it because it'll be back in 6 months with another broken port, guaranteed. But yeah, there we go. It is what it is. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comment section down below. As always, I'll do my best to answer. If you need to organise a repair, you can get in touch with me at thecody.repair. And if you need any parts and supplies for these, if you need HDMI ports or anything else like that, you can buy those on my online store, consolefix.shop. But with that being said, thank you very much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. And until next time, I'll see you later. Bye for now.